It's the giver of life to the earth. But this most elemental offering of nature to man now carries a threat.
There are people drinking water that's contaminated, and they don't know that the water's contaminated.
A flood of chemicals has invaded America's drinking water. Chemicals known to cause birth defects, nerve damage, cancer. Turning this universal source of life into a source of fear.
I can't tell you who it is, but somebody will die because we're not moving on a hazardous waste problem today.
For years, we've known that man-made chemicals have been poisoning our surface water, the water we can see. But now we're realizing the peril to this nation's health is far more massive than that and far more difficult to control. Those chemicals have filtered into the vast hidden stores of water held in the ground under us, the groundwater from which half our population drinks. Poisons that may stay captured there for generations, collecting in concentrations thousands of times greater than in surface water, to move unseen, slowly in great plumes to wells across the country. Regional reports of the Environmental Protection Agency identify serious groundwater contamination in 34 states. And ABC News has compiled a list of 25 states where serious contamination has led to the closing of drinking wells. All levels of government have been slow to act. Industry is quick to oppose tighter regulations. Meanwhile, chemicals are showing up in the water supplies of more and more cities and towns. ABC News has learned from an unreleased EPA study that in a random sample of 186 towns and cities drawing on groundwater, and with populations of over 10,000, 28% showed traces of toxic chemicals. 12 communities exceeded suggested EPA standards. Groundwater contamination is endangering major population centers: Atlantic City, Miami, Baton Rouge, Fresno, Los Angeles. Most Americans don't know if they have chemicals in their water. Those who do are angry, frustrated, and frightened. Woburn, Massachusetts. Within these neighborhoods since 1968, 21 children have been stricken with leukemia, 6 just within a 10-square block area. The chances of this happening are 1 in 5,000. And all these children were drinking from a water system contaminated with industrial chemicals. Still, those families don't really know if it was the water that hurt their children.
Ever since he got sick, I was involved, in trying to find out what was in that water, what caused him to be sick. And I think very strongly that it was the water.
But for years, parents in Woburn battled to get someone in government to find out what was in their water. One clue was plain. Woburn has long been crowded with factories and industrial dumps, 9 on an EPA list of hazardous sites. But the city was not testing its water for organic chemical wastes. Then, 1975, the state warns the city about high levels of contaminants in 2 wells. 1977, both city and state tests find indications of high levels of toxic chemicals in a nearby test well. Nobody told the public. Not only that, neither the state nor the city bothered to test comprehensively the suspect wells for another 2 years. Only after the EPA discovered buried drums in the vicinity in 1979 did the state check the wells for organic chemicals. They found high levels of trichloroethylene and tetrachloroethylene, both known carcinogens, and the wells were shut down. But for the families in Woburn, the anguish and uncertainties remain. Could drinking water with industrial chemicals have caused the leukemia rate among its citizens? And what legacy of danger lingers?
You know, to me, I can look back and...
Next week, I need to go into the hospital and get a bone arrow. And if it says it's okay, I can get near some kids, I think, and play with them. And if it isn't okay, I'll have to get the IV again and sleep overnight. And go home the next day.
On August 10th, 1981, Robbie died.
I care about my son now that's alive, okay, and what his future's gonna be. I'm concerned about, you know, the world he's gonna have to live in and you know, other kids his ages from each generation on. You know, who's gonna take care of them? You know, where are they gonna live that it's gonna be safe and clean? You know, what water are they gonna drink?
For those living out in rural communities, the situation is even more uncertain. 60 million residents of rural America are not even protected by the Safe Drinking Water Act. And ABC News has learned from another unreleased EPA study that 5.5 million rural families are drinking water with toxic contaminants. That is the fear of the people of Yellow Creek, Kentucky.
You bathe in it, you get a rash. You try to drink it, you become nauseated.
The people here believe chemicals are poisoning the water they drink, and that no one's doing anything to stop it.
I want the pollution to stop, and I'm a citizen of Middlesboro. I pay the taxes, I pay the sewage rates, but I'll not pay them to keep the tannery open to kill people.
Down that creek, when we was taking the health survey, there was 3 different people died with cancer and leukemia while we were doing it. One girl, 21 years old, eat up from head to toe.
People here trace that pattern of illness back to 1965, when the local tannery along the creek increased its use of chemicals. Under a contract with the city, it discharged its waste into the city's sewage plant to be treated. But those chemicals destroyed the very mechanism meant to treat them. The result, some of the toxic chemicals pass on into Yellow Creek. People have also seen the tannery's chemicals overflow from its waste lagoons. They believe those chemicals are reaching their drinking wells.
If people lived around here and could smell the water when it is heating, the odor it gives off, and when you bath in it, you get red bumps on you from the water. It eats the fittings up on the faucets. I've just put new ones in here a month or so ago, and both of them. And they're already starting to leak now from being eat with the chemicals.
Chuck Taylor and his neighbors along Yellow Creek finally turned to Vanderbilt University to get their water tested. Those tests found toxic chemicals up to 8 times above established danger levels. Cadmium and lead, known to cause at very low levels nerve damage, brain damage, especially in children. Chromium, linked to cancer, a heavy metal discharged by the tannery. The Taylors blame those chemicals for their daughter's severe health problems.
She was in Children's Hospital on critical list. She's been back there several times since then, but we took her off of the water about a year ago. Since then, she's just doing terrific. She's been no problem. We have a little girl just across the creek here who's got leukemia, and then we had a 20-year-old just up a mile or so from us who died with cancer.
The tannery's vice president, Robert Partridge.
I will open to the page and tell you exactly what the federal government said as far as contamination of those wells. They did not find that in their testing of those wells. They found that the greatest contamination in those wells was caused from contamination from themselves. And I will say nothing more because those are the facts.
Random tests of wells by the state and the EPA failed to detect the same chemicals found by Vanderbilt University. But the U.S. Center for Disease Control has advised measures, quote, to minimize the exposure of Yellow Creek residents to tannery pollutants. Recently, the EPA cited the city and the tannery for continuing contamination of Yellow Creek. But that's small consolation for those people who fear their families are dying from their drinking water.
We have got the knowledge, and we can put a man on the moon and bring him back, but we can't clean up 14 miles of water.
A million people who live here in California's Central Valley have been exposed to a chemical in their drinking water that causes sterility and cancer. This is the site of the largest known case of groundwater contamination in the country. 7,000 square miles from Lodi to Bakersfield. Nationwide, one of the major sources of groundwater contamination comes from pesticides. There are 35,000 registered pesticides containing 600 chemical compounds. Yet the EPA requires tests for only 6 compounds in drinking water. But no one was thinking of drinking water when first news of a pesticide's danger broke in 1977.
Good evening. Here's what's happening. Another case of workers being hurt by something very mysterious in their plant tonight. It's reportedly hitting a number of men, and it's making them sterile.
DBCP had been created to sterilize certain root parasites that plague American farmers. Tiny amounts had sterilized lab animals, yet regulations at the time did not require further research. It took the discovery of sterility at Occidental to bring action. Then some Dow and Shell workers turned up sterile as well. The state immediately banned the use of DBCP. The EPA suspended use on certain crops, but waited 2 years to ban it. But the question of whether pesticides could filter down to the groundwater had been overlooked. In fact, one manufacturer, Occidental, already knew it was contaminating neighboring wells. For years, they had dumped DBCP and other waste into pits and lagoons on their plant property. In 1975, a company environmental engineer wrote an Occidental vice president. We are slowly contaminating all wells in our area, and 2 of our own wells are contaminated to the point of being toxic to animals or humans. This is a time bomb that we must defuse. This last sentence was capitalized and underlined. 1977, the attached well data shows that we have destroyed the usability of several wells in our area. 1978, Occidental, involved in a takeover battle, finally decided to reveal this information to the state. We asked Occidental why they had waited 3 years to warn the state. The company responded by letter 3 weeks before this program was completed. ABC's program includes superficial treatment of an important subject. Occidental Chemical complied with California reporting requirements. The revelation by Occidental led to a larger discovery, that pesticides could move through soil to groundwater. But that realization came too late. For 20 years, California farmers had injected over 3 billion pounds of DBCP into the soil. The pesticides filtered to the groundwater below and found their way to the drinking water supplies of 1 million people. For half a century, men fought and died over water in these parts. Now the enemy is in the water itself. Once DBCP was banned, the problem did not end for the people of the Central Valley. Farmers turned to substitutes, which are now showing up in California's drinking water. Animal tests indicate they are highly dangerous. Dichloropropane, 1,2-D, known to cause liver and kidney damage. Aldicarb, high acute toxicity, attacks the central nervous system. Ethylene dibromide, EDB, same properties as DBCP, but more potent, causes cancer, genetic damage, sterility. And the deadly DBCP, though banned for use, will remain in the groundwater for generations to come. This is the darkest side of the chemical revolution. For 40 years, we've been dumping our chemical waste the cheap and easy way into the ground. Millions and millions of tons of it, including some of the most poisonous substances in existence. Some lie half covered in rotting drums. Some glisten in thick black lagoons, their toxic lifetime still to be measured in centuries. The single greatest threat to this nation's drinking water. And even while we estimate the dangerous legacy of our old toxic waste, we are daily making and abandoning still more, in the clear knowledge that the poisons do not go away. They go down into our water supplies. Most of our liquid waste dumps are unlined. 80% are perfectly placed to contaminate groundwater. Wells are being destroyed, water systems contaminated. Everywhere, our waste is reaching back toward us in our groundwater. And the cleanup has barely begun. An EPA regional administrator, Jackie Schaefer.
Not just here, we have 418 or 19 sites around the country that we've identified as our highest priority cleanups. And probably there are hundreds more. We're finding materials we didn't know existed before, and we're confronted with problems of chemical waste management that we have never, in our wildest dreams, imagined would be confronting us. We're talking about an environmental agenda that is going to last us 10, 20, 30 years into the future.
Or maybe decades more. We're still trying to measure the damage our careless past is doing to our present. There are 400,000 landfills, pits, ponds, and lagoons scarring our country's landscape, and we're still counting. In our most advanced industries, we are repeating some of our most elementary mistakes. Example, San Jose, California, the new frontier of high technology, home to manufacturers of computer chips like Fairchild Camera and Instruments, a clean industry and a green land. But behind the gardens and the glass, there is still unforgiving chemical waste that once loose in the ground is a massive threat to our drinking water. Not dumped, but stored underground in a fiberglass tank. In 1981, it was discovered that poisonous chemicals had leaked into the ground beneath the trim lawns and neat houses into this neighborhood's drinking water supply. And already, in a bright new setting, an old pattern of fear was forming. It was Lorraine Ross who began asking questions.
In the beginning, when we went to our public agencies and telling them, hey, come down here and take a look at what's going on in this neighborhood. How come all these children are sick? Why are we having so many birth problems? They told us we weren't having a problem.
This map of the area tells a different story. Lawyer Amanda Hawes charts the damage to the neighborhood's families.
The red flags are the children born with heart problems. The orange flags are children born with other defects. Yellow flags are cancers. This strip of yellow you see across the bottom here, those are cancers. When there's a black flag over the orange flag, it indicates the child died. And unfortunately, in terms of the neighborhood and human health problems, this information is continuously being updated, by which I mean we're putting more flags on the map.
Once the Fairchild leak became known, the parents' suspicions were confirmed. For an unknown period, they and their families had been drinking water laced with chemicals. Tests showed it was poisoned with massive amounts of trichloroethane, TCA, a common industrial solvent. The TCA was present at 1,800 parts per billion, 6 times the state's danger level.
How did Fairchild, which every day makes products accurate to fractions of a millimeter, manage to lose 58,000 gallons from a storage tank over an 18-month period without noticing?
And how come when the leak was confirmed in December 1981, neither the EPA nor the state nor local health authorities nor the water companies said one word to the public? The people first learned when someone tipped off a local newspaper days after the leak was discovered. The whole handling of the disaster has added bitterness to their fears. To the parents, the link between their children and Fairchild's lost chemicals is clear. The company admits the leak, but denies liability for the health damage. Fairchild declined to be interviewed for this program because the parents have begun a lawsuit against the corporation.
We felt that that was probably the only way we were ever going to get any answers, that it was going to necessitate putting people under oath to tell the truth, and maybe we would find out about really what happened here, because we'd had cover-ups from the very beginning.
Automated, climate-controlled, surgically clean, the new frontier of industry has suddenly taken on an eerie resemblance to the old. Because they're for temporary storage, the tanks are not covered by state or federal regulations. The companies are trusted to monitor themselves. Thus, communities elsewhere face the specter of another San Jose, while their toxic waste await removal to one of several high-tech disposal sites throughout the country. Massive chemical graveyards. This one, covering 385 acres, handles toxic material from 33 states, Canada, and Taiwan. Some experts consider it the most advanced state-of-the-art in waste containment. But Peter Montague of Princeton University, who studied landfills elsewhere, believes that all landfills will eventually leak.
I looked at 4 so-called state-of-the-art, modern design landfills. These were double-lined, secure landfills for chemical waste with a so-called leak detector in between the 2 bathtubs, in between the 2 liners. Each of these facilities started leaking in less than a year from the time it was built. So they're brand new landfills, latest design, and they're leaking.
William Sanger of the EPA's Hazardous Waste Division agrees.
So in fact, it is inevitable that landfills will leak. That's the present state of knowledge.
Now, this is not news to the EPA, is it?
Not only is it not news to EPA, but EPA is the principal source of that information. It was EPA's research and EPA's and tax dollars to uncover that, and this has been said in the highest levels of EPA and published sources. The Federal Register contained a discussion of this in great detail, signed by the administrator of EPA, pointing out that we don't know how to make landfills that don't leak.
The question is, who will protect us? The enormous agency created by Congress to do that, the EPA, has been mired in bureaucracy and political division and subject to endless petitions from the industries it's supposed to regulate.
The environmental public health agencies of this country have got to get better at preventive medicine, whether it's preventive medicine as it deals with public health or the environment. And in suggesting that, I recognize I'm running into the face of the way we traditionally respond to these kind of problems. We respond to crises. And that is really what I think is at stake, not just in groundwater, but the whole gamut of environmental, public health, global kinds of environmental issues. What's at stake is whether free societies work. And I think it's an open question.
I would like to direct my question to the EPA. How safe is our water right now, the drinking water?
I don't know. From the samples that we've taken, which explained by Mr. Clegg, I just said...
With little faith in government agencies, even less in industry, people are increasingly relying upon themselves or turning to the courts to seek protection. But everywhere they are confronted with the power of industry. Increasingly, the vital question of public health is being decided not by science or government, but by the courts, by lawyers, judges, juries, and decided slowly and expensively. While we wait, new chemicals proliferate, 20 a week, 1,000 a year, all added to the 63,000 already in our environment. And so the danger to our future deepens. Who is protecting us? At present, the answer for many is no one.